Already, obviously the draft is coming up here soon, and I just wanted to kind of take a second to look at this quarterback field, and I just wanted to put them into a ranking. So it's going to be a little bit confusing to understand there, but obviously we have best, and then you'll understand once I get to the 7 through 11, 4 through 7, 2 through 4, you'll understand how I do that then. But we are going to start off at the bottom, and I will say I think that Sam Hartman is probably the lowest at this point, and the only reason I would say that is just because he's an older quarterback. I didn't really see a lot when he was at Notre Dame, or more so maybe enough to a point where I think that he would really stand as a good, at least player in the NFL. I could maybe see a backup role for him, but other than that, I just don't see a whole lot there. And the next guy is the Tulane guy, and this is going to be number 11. I'll move it down later. But Michael Pratt, I just don't like quarterbacks that come from these smaller schools. That's just never been something that I've been comfortable with. I kind of called out that I didn't like Zach Wilson, and I don't know. There's something about the smaller school guys that I don't like. Now, that's not the case every time, but I just think in this case, I wouldn't. This seems like the Chargers Easton guy. That's a comparison that I see here. So I don't really see him making that much of an impact in the NFL. The next is going to be, for me, it is going to be Joe Milton that I'm going to have here. And I just, he had a very kind of underwhelming last year when there was a lot of hype with him going into this, that he was going to be this, really good quarterback, and it just didn't really all come together. So that's why he's at number 10 for me. The next is going to be Spencer Rattler, and, he was, just a highly touted player going into Oklahoma. A lot of people had high hopes for him, thought that he was going to do really well, and, he just really underperformed, had an okay year the year after at South Carolina, but it was nothing really special, nothing that really was going to move the meter, in my opinion. Just really didn't get to that level, and that's just why I don't really see him having that much success in the NFL, and that's why I'm going to have him in that spot. And by the way, if we go to number 8 here, I think Jordan Travis, and I thought he was a really exceptional college quarterback. Really exceptional. And I think that Florida State goes a lot further if he isn't to get injured. I really do believe that. But is he going to translate to the NFL? And, we're kind of getting into a lot of quarterbacks that I like here at this point. And that's just why he's going to be at that 8th spot. But, I mean, he would have a fighting chance. I'm not saying that he can't start games in the NFL. I'm just saying at this point, I just, with his size, I just don't really see it. And then next, I'm going to go with Tua's younger brother. I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name right now, but he actually did a really good job at Maryland for what he had and, the circumstances. And Maryland was actually a pretty good team. They kind of fell apart towards the end of the year, but they actually had pretty good stretches when he was at the quarterback for them, and I think that he did a lot with a little, which is, usually a great sign. And, it's a Big Ten school, so he's going up against teams like Michigan, teams like Ohio State, Penn State every year because they were in that, East Side division. So, he would have the experience, and I think he's got a fighting chance in the NFL. And then we get into these next quarterbacks, and a lot of people aren't going to like this take here, but I'm not the biggest believer in J.J. McCarthy. I'm not. And, it could be some of the resentment towards Michigan that I have, but I think on the other end, there's a lot of logic there. Michigan's bread and butter throughout his stretch and throughout last year was running the football. They ran the football exceptionally well for college football, and that kind of opened up the passing game a little bit. Not that he passed it much. If you look at his numbers, they're not that good. He had a little over 2,000 yards passing, which by no stretch of the imagination is bad, but I I don't see how you can look at that year with, one of the best rush attacks in the league and just think that he's this like quarterback that's going to be able to go into a bad team, most likely where he would be drafted, unless he like goes to like a Seattle or something and just go in there and take over. I'm just not seeing it at this point. That's why I have him as the number 6 quarterback in this draft. Then we're going to go to number 5, and I think it's Bo Nix. And I think, Bo Nix, it's tough because he's an older guy, and you have to think, is it a case of, is what you see at Oregon what the final product is, which very well could be possible. But I think he does a lot of winning stuff. He's been playing quarterback forever at this point. Good on his feet, good getting out of the pocket. I think he can make some good plays, and I think him and J.J. McCarthy, they're kind of interchangeable here. But if you're looking at straight passing stats from college football, Bo Nix beats him in passing yards categories. So that's just why I have him there. And then we're going to a guy right now who I think is getting, really, really dogged. Really, really dogged right now. And that is at the 4th best, Michael Penix Jr. I think that he's getting dogged in a lot of these mock drafts. I think he's the most accurate quarterback out of all of them. That game against Texas was really good, and he had 2 really good games against Oregon. And I don't think he should be slept on. I think he could go in the top 10, and I wouldn't have a problem with it. Like if the Giants took a chance, Giants would be a really tough fit for him, but like if Atlanta took a chance on him, that would be really good. If he gets drafted later down the road, team with weapons would be really key. Like I said, really accurate. Sometimes can miss, but the majority of the time, when he's playing his best, he's very accurate. And he may be I'm not gonna go out of my way to say it, but he might be the CJ Stroud of this draft. I'm not gonna straight up say that, but I'm leaning towards that as we go into this. And at number 3, I do have Jaden Daniels. He had a really good year, obviously, lost some games at LSU, but nobody's really perfect. The roster wasn't great at LSU. He did have a remarkable season, though the numbers are off the chart. If he doesn't have those 3 losses, we're talking about one of the great seasons we've seen. And he can do a lot of things, but another thing with him, he's got his age at that point. He's kind of older. Not that old, though. I think he'll be fine. I think that whether he goes to the Commanders or the Patriots, I think he's the only guy that can go to the Patriots between him and Drake May, or out of any of the other guys that are listed below, that could actually probably somehow make it work, even though you're going to have to overcome somewhat of a bad head coaching decision, defensive role. They're going to have to really have a good OC that's going to really put this all together. But, I think that he could play pretty well. And then number 2, I've switched on them a lot of times. I'll probably switch on them again before the end of this draft process where we evaluate these guys. But looking more at Drake May, he's got the size, and he's really starting to remind me. I know they say it all the time, but he's really starting to remind me more so of Josh Allen than I'd thought in the past. And if you're just looking at the build, he's got it. If you're looking at the arm, it's similar. The interview, there's just a lot of comparisons that I'm seeing, and he's a little bit more polished than Josh Allen going into the draft. And I think that if you put him in Washington at that number 2, if there's no trades that go down and he goes to Washington, I think it might just work. I think it might just work with, what they have there. You have a veteran receiver like Terry McLaurin. You got some other pieces, and you have a new ownership group, coaching staff that seems to be on the rise. I think him to Washington might just work. And I think that if you're looking at it talent-wise, I think that he's a Josh Allen type in this draft. He's the Josh Allen of this draft, for sure. And if you can get somebody to the level of him who can change games, he also I see a little bit of Herbert there too. Maybe a hybrid between Herbert and Josh Allen. I see a little bit of both guys that you would want on your team. And then I have the best is Caleb Williams. You know, I've made videos on Caleb Williams. You can go check that out. But I think he's good. He's not a can't miss guy or a generational talent, but he's definitely the best quarterback out of this field. There's a lot that he does well. He's the closest comparison to Patrick Mahomes that we've seen since Patrick Mahomes came into the league. He obviously had a better college career than Patrick Mahomes. So, you know, we'll see what happens, but I do think that if we're talking about natural talent and ability, he's the best out of this field, and that's kind of where I have for the top